Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet. Before reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, one should offer respectful obeisances to Narayana Rishis, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the highest human being, the goddess of learning Saraswati, and Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Bhagavatam. We are reading from the 4th canto, chapter 9, Dhruva Maharaj returns home, text 30. Yes. Please repeat. Dhruva Uvacham Samadhina Naika Bhavena Yat Padam Viduhu Sanandadhayam Urdvam Retasaha Manasair Aham Shadbhir Amushya Padayosh Chayam Upitya Pagataha Pritan Matihi Dhruva Vacham Samadhina Naika Bhavena Yatpadham Vidu Sanandadhaya Urdvareta Saham Masairaham Shadbhir Amushya Padayosh Chayam Upitya Pagata Pritam Matihi Dhruva Uvacham Samadhina Naika Bhavena Yatpadam Vidu Sanandadhaya Urdvareta Saham Masairaham Shadbhiramushya Padhayosh Chayam Upitya Pagatah Spritam Matihi. Dhruva uvacha Samadhina naika bhavena yatpadam Anybody else? So we'll read the word by word translation. Dhruva Vacham. Dhruva Maharaj said, Samadhina, by practicing yoga in trance. Na, never. Ekabhavena, by one birth. Yat, which. Padam, position. Viduhu, understood. Sananda Adayaha, the four brahmacharis headed by Sanandana. Urdvare tasaha, infallible celibates. Masaihi, within months. Aham, I. Shadbhihi, 6. Amushya, of him. Padayoho, of the lotus feet. Chayam, shelter. Upetya, achieving. Apagataha, fell down. Pritakmatihi, my mind fixed on things other than the Lord. So then translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Dhruva Maharaj taught to himself, to endeavor to be situated in the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord is not an ordinary task, because even the great brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, who practice Ashtanga Yoga in trance, attain the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet only after many, many births. Within 6 months, I achieved the same result, yet due to my thinking differently from the Lord, I fell down from my position. One more time. Dhruva Maharaj taught to himself, to endeavor to be situated in the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord is not an ordinary task, because even the great brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, who practice Ashtanga Yoga in trance, attain the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet only after many, many births. Within 6 months, I achieved the same result. Yet, due to my thinking differently from the Lord, I fell down from my position. Purport. In this verse, Dhruva Maharaj himself explains the cause of his moroseness. First, he laments that to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly is not easy. Even great saintly persons, like the 4 celebrated brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, Sanaka, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumaras, practiced the yoga system for many, many births and remained in trance before getting the opportunity to see the Supreme Lord face to face. As far as Dhruva Maharaj was concerned, he saw the Supreme Lord personally after only 6 months of practice in devotional service. He He expected therefore that as soon as he met the Supreme Lord, the Lord would take him to his abode immediately, without waiting. Dhruva Maharaj could understand very clearly that the Lord had offered him the rule of the world for 36,000 years because in the beginning he was under the spell of the material energy and wanted to take revenge against his stepmother and rule over his father's kingdom. Dhruva Maharaj greatly lamented his propensity for ruling the material world and in his revengeful attitude towards other living entities. Om Hagyana Timirandasya Gyanangyana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopipakanta Radhakanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pangor Mamamanda Amatergati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radhamadana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadru Mada Srimadradangara Simhasanasto Srimadrada Srila Govinda Devo Prishtalivi Savimano Smarami Srimandra Sarasaramvi Vamsiva Tatatastitaha Karsham Veno Svanai Gopir Gopinata Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishavano Sotadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, good morning. So I will read shortly the previous verse so we have a little bit context. So before Vidura was inquiring from Maitreya Muni why Dhruva Maharaj, after meeting the Lord, after getting darshan, actually he was not happy, not really happy. And then the answer of Maitreya Muni is as follows. Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly aggrieved, and thus, when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. So, and in the verse we read today, he is reflecting directly the same. So, Dhruva Maharaj's thinking is comparing himself to the four Kumaras. And of course that's a good comparison because the four Kumaras are also young boys. They are probably of a similar age, around 5 years of age. And even they are bodily wise, have this child body. They actually are the oldest sages in the universe. They are the four mind-born sons of Brahma. Chaturmukha Brahma manifests from each one of his four faces or heads. He manifests these four sons. And the expectation of Brahma was actually that these four boys would populate the universe, would become Prajapatis, would have many children and create progeny. But by the influence of Narada Muni, the four boys decided to better remain children, Don't even get into the age of puberty, because as soon as the body reaches puberty, all kinds of, bodily desires arise. So they were so powerful that by choice, they remain children, They remain children in appearance, and also physically they remain children. Even they are the oldest and wisest sages. And Dhruva Maharaj is comparing himself to them, that they, for many, many, many lifetimes, were preparing. The first word here in the verse is samadhi. Samadhina naikabhavena yatpadam. Through yoga, through sadhana, they engaged, elevated themselves to the level where they finally were able to directly meet the Lord. Technically, the 4 Kumaras are described as being Brahmavadis. So we have the Mayavadis that we usually might hear about very often. So the Mayavadis consider everything is Maya, everything is illusion. So that's a negative view. Everything is illusion, everything is not real. Jagat Mithya, the world is false. Everything that we see, every variety that we perceive is false, and only Brahman is Satyam. So the Brahmavadis, they focus more on Brahman and less on the Mithya or the falsehood of material reality. And they focus on the reality that everything is Brahman, but they are completely open to the possibility of variety existing in transcendence. So you could say they are not opinionated. The Mayavadis are very opinionated. They have a very clear opinion and idea about especially different manifestations or incarnations of the Lord. They think that they also are Maya. Any form, any variety is Maya. Whereas the Brahmavadi is not yet sure. And the moment he experiences something higher, he is able to appreciate it. So the 4 Kumaras for many, many lives, were endeavoring. And finally they smelled, it is described, the tulsi manjaris, the flowers, the leaves on the feet of Lord Vishnu, and they were so attracted by that fragrance that they finally, met the Lord directly. And in a few places in the Bhagavatam, they appear and they give instructions, especially a little bit later in this, in the 4th canto, we hear the story of Prithu Maharaj, and there they instruct Prithu Maharaj. So they are, very, famous, great sages. Also, one of the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas originates from the Kumaras, from the 4 Kumaras. We have the Lakshmi Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya. We belong to the Brahma Sampradaya, and there's the Rudra Sampradaya, and then there is also the Kumara Sampradaya. So these are the 4 main Vaishnava Sampradayas. And Dhruva Maharaj is comparing himself to the 4 Kumaras, and he is repenting that his motivation was mixed. So that's the whole topic here. He had a mixed motivation. See, motivation was not purely to actually attain the Lord, but he had a very strong motivation of revenge. Actually, he wanted revenge. He was humiliated, by his stepmother. So that misbehavior, it is described in a previous verse. Maitreya Muni say he did not forget it while he was practicing yoga. So even he was practicing devotional service very diligently and completely focused, and had a very strong determination. And of course, this, you could say, the determination and sincerity is proven that the Lord appeared, so soon, but still it was mixed. So he is considering now that he fell down. He says, I fell down from my position. So he already had the direct darshan of the Lord. He was standing directly in front of the Lord. He first gained Paramatma realization, and then he directly saw the Lord. He had directly Bhagavan realization, directly could interact and see the Lord. But then the Lord, you could almost say, condemned him to 36,000 years of ruling the world. So that's what he wanted originally, to be a very powerful ruler, more powerful than his father, or even more powerful than Brahma, ultimately. But when he was comparing the two options, the option one would be, his preferred option would have been to just remain with the Lord, and go with him back to Godhead, remain in his association. And the other option was, of course, that his original desire would be fulfilled as well. So in a few purports here in this section of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is describing how we should be attentive of how which desires we are cultivating along our devotional service. So because as we progress in devotional service, there will be some material successes, that might come along with it. So if we get attached to it, or if the motivation to practice devotional service is, connected to one of those four, then at one point we might repent it. So we should be careful what we desire, because sometimes we say not everything you desire you can get, but if you desire it long enough, you eventually will get it. So you should be careful what desires you are cultivating, what thoughts you are cultivating, because eventually it will manifest. Because ultimately what's driving this material existence is our desire. We are desire, like in the Buddhist philosophy, desire is considered to be the main problem, because they don't understand spiritual desire, so they only view desire as a problem. Desire is the problem, because we desire, that's why we suffer. That's the Siddhanta, in Buddhist philosophy. Of course, we understand that desires and emotions can be redirected. We can have spiritual desires, spiritual emotions. But of course, material desires are very problematic. They will entangle us, in this world. And it is really like that everything actually begins from a subtle level. Sometimes we might tell children that not whatever they desire they can get. But in reality, the longer you desire, you will get it eventually. So you should be careful what you desire. Because everything begins with a desire, with a thought, and then you might think about it a long time, then you speak about it, and the more you visualize it, you want it, at one point you will actually get it. And within this world, we can have the experience that usually the fulfillment of a desire is underwhelming. In very rare occasions, it is overwhelming. Usually, it's underwhelming. That means that the looking forward to your desire being fulfilled is very intense. And you might be looking forward, to whatever, maybe a vacation somewhere. And nowadays the weather is very unpredictable everywhere. So at one point I had a yoga school, and when yoga students go to some this destination like Thailand or Bali, they want to know if the weather is going to be nice. I'm going to spend so much money to book this yoga course. I want to learn yoga, but I also want to enjoy. So is the weather going to be nice? What is the best season to come? And the reality is, there is no real good season, because you never know. Maybe in Satya Yuga, and maybe also 50 years ago, it was more predictable. But nowadays, everywhere there's all kinds of, we realize you cannot really promise. If you promise somebody nice weather, then they will complain. There's no nice weather. I came all the way here, and it's raining the whole time. And the reason is because in this world, always things, like in the Yoga Sutras is described, the three modes of material nature, they rise for ascendancy to thwart what we actually want. So very often the three modes of material nature, they will act in a way that is not what we actually wanted. So when you want to drive a car, you fall asleep. Then you want to sleep, then you are afraid and you can't sleep, and so on and so forth. So the three modes of material nature are very powerful, and they very often will act in ways that don't actually benefit us. So we should be aware and conscious of this, the powerful influence of the three modes of material nature, and understand them, understand how they work. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks quite a few times about the modes of material nature, and conclusively he's saying that actually understanding how they work is one of the paths to liberation. Just being conscious, how these three modes of material nature are binding us to this world. It's very similar to Sankhya Yoga. If you understand how you are entangled, you can understand how to get out of this entanglement as well. What else I wanted to say? Give me a second. Yes, so the one word which was also mentioned there is the word Urdhvaretasaha. That's the way the four Kumaras are described. Urdhvaretasaha. They're infallible, celibates. And Urdhvaretasaha literally means to raise the energy. Urdhvaretasaha. Urdhvareta, you raise the power of the semen to use it for a higher purpose. So this is a very powerful process that Prabhupada mentions quite a few times actually in his purports. And Prabhupada also mentions a few, you could say, techniques or simple ways to raise that energy, because that energy can be you could say wasted, but if it's used properly, it can be used to enhance our mental capacity. And psychologists, of course nowadays it might be a little bit controversial to make such a distinction, but there are many psychologists who have analyzed male and female psychology, and male psychology tends to be either of two main kinds. Either somebody who has managed to control his sexual energy and then is very focused, very strong, and that basically means Urdhvaretasaha. This energy is being used and focused towards a higher goal. Or those who are guided by lust and desire, and they can be very destructive, self-destructive in the worst case. If tamas is there, if there's a lot of passion, it might be destructive, for others, But these two men tend to fall in these two main categories. Either they're very focused, or they are guided, by lust and desires. So Urdhvaretasaha is a very powerful, very simple method. And of course, the question which always arises in this connection is, Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita that we should not. Somebody who is externally pretending to follow something, or to like we are, how do you say, renouncing, material enjoyment, but internally we're still thinking about the object of enjoyment. Somebody like that is a cheater. So we don't want to be cheaters. We want to be honest. But at the same time, one should endeavor to achieve an ideal. And there are very simple, techniques. There are some pranayama techniques, but eating the right amount is a very simple technique. Not eating too many sweets, not eating too spicy, not too rajasic food is also a very powerful technique. Taking a cold shower, from toe to head upwards, also very simple technique to raise this energy in the right direction. Yes, so the four Kumaras were such exemplary brahmacharis, and they practiced the yoga system. So yoga is, you could say, in general, you could say that we are also practicing yoga, bhakti yoga. But in many ways, the yoga that we practice is very different than the yoga most people think of as yoga, and even classically what is traditionally understood as yoga. because the yoga system is focusing on first completely cleansing the material, you could say, entanglements. It's really about tapas. It's a big part of yoga, tapasya. So you perform tapasya, you perform renunciation and heavy austerities in order to completely withdraw yourself from the external world. Like a tortoise, Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, like a tortoise, it's pulling its limbs whenever there's danger into its hard protective shell. In a similar way, the yogi learns to withdraw his senses from the external world. So this is a very, you could say, difficult, training. It's very tasking, and it's very, it's called, what's it called, the Yoga Sutra number 2? Chittas vritti nirodha. So you want to stop the movements of the mind. So the mind is vritti, is making circles. Many circles. It's going around and around and around. So depending how much knowledge you have, how much information you have, how much life experience you have, your circles might be very small, or your circles might be, very big. But the mind is always moving in circles. There's always and you can observe yourself. You can also sometimes, old people make the same jokes. And if you know somebody for some time, they say one word, okay, they start telling this now. Okay, now this topic is starting, and he's going to tell that now for a few minutes, And so that way we move in circles actually, And we are trapped, We are trapped in these circles, and these circles of course also involve all kinds of desires, So there's only a question of time until again you want to have, an ice cream, And then either you try to steal it from the kitchen or go to the temple shop, but you need an ice cream, And like that, so desires, sensations, ideas, thoughts, activities, all of the activities of the mind and connected with the senses, they move in circles. And the idea of yoga is nirodha, It means you want to stop it, You want to stop this movement, this circular movement, and the word nirodha is quite, you could say, heavy. It means stop now. Not moving in circles anymore. And the reason that is given is in the third sutra is that because if we don't do that, we actually think that the movement of chitta is our actual self. Or actually, before it's mentioned, if we manage to do that. If we manage to stop the movements of the mind, we will be able to see the true self. Swarupa itayatra. So we can see our swarupa, we can see our true self, if we stop just following this vrittis, of the mind and the false ego. If we don't practice yoga, if we don't aim to, for self-realization, you could say, what will happen is that we identify any sensation that we have, any idea that we have, any desire that we have, as us, or as we, So, in other words, when you practice yoga, you should understand that what the mind is telling is not you, It's not you. It's the chitta. It's the material consciousness. You could say the mind, the intelligence, the false ego. The three subtle elements are together chitta, and they make up, guided by the false ego. They point towards the external reality as the source of identity and source of pleasure. So practicing yoga means to refocus, redirect this focus towards, the internal reality, the antaranga shakti. And literally within our heart, if we purify this heart, and if our eyes are purified by the you could also say healed by the ointment of love, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, then we can see Shyamasundar, we can see the Lord within our heart. So the Lord is there. Everything is directly accessible. The spiritual reality can be, you could say, achieved in two ways. Mechanically speaking, you would have to travel very, very far. You would have to access this world, cross all the elemental layers of this universe. You would have to cross the entire, cosmos, material cosmos. You would have to cross the Viraja river and then enter into Brahmajyoti and then travel across all the Vaikuntha planets and to finally at one point reach Goloka Vrindavan. But actually this is the mechanical process. The mechanical process is not our idea. In the Madhva Sampradaya, the mechanical process is emphasized much more. But in another sense, basically in the Madhva Sampradaya, the idea is that if you're born as a Shudra, you should be a good Shudra. A good Shudra will be born as a Vaishya. A good Vaishya will be born as a Kshatriya. A good Kshatriya will be born as a Brahmana. A good Brahmana can go to the heavenly planets, to Brahma ideally. And at the end of Brahma's life, together with Brahma, you will be liberated. So that might take some time. But the other process is, you could say, in comparison, is what Dhruva Maharaj was doing. He was very sincere, very sincere. He was driven by a very strong determination, and he attained perfection within 6 months. So what is the difference? You could say, what is the difference? What is the difference between somebody who is focusing on yoga, trying to stop all the movements of the mind, stopping all desires, you could say, to create a completely clean consciousness that then can appreciate transcendence, because these were the Kumaras. The Kumaras had complete clean consciousness. They were Brahmavadis. They were fully realized of Brahman, and in their perfected stage, of Brahman and Atmaram, they were happy within themselves. When they saw the Lord, or when they smelled the fragrance of the tulasi leaves of the Lord, they were completely attracted and agitated. Nothing material could attract them anymore, but something spiritual could still attract them. So that's a very long, difficult process. Our process is, you could say, childish, and that's Dhruva Maharaj is a very good example, because he was a child. And so like a child, we should just raise our hands, and chant the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So just like a child is crying for his mother, in a very similar fashion, we take shelter, Sharanagati. This is our hope. Our plan is not to successively, birth by birth, which might happen anyways, but like Prabhupada used to say, shoot for the rhinoceros, Try to go straight away for the final goal, Don't be too realistic, Be idealistic, It's like, no, I'm so fallen, I won't be able to make it, I have no hope, So the example of Dhruva Maharaj is very inspiring, because even he had some material motivation, still he was successful. And this is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita, that different people, of course, start spiritual life. There's a list of 4. 4 main motivations lead one to spiritual activities. So one is suffering. You're just suffering so much that you need some relief. So you might take shelter. Like there is the saying in German, in the Schützengraben, in the trenches, in the war trenches, there is no atheists, in the First World War, especially. In the First World War, there were horrible, I forgot exactly how many million, but basically the border between France and Germany only moved maybe, a few kilometers, back and forth, over the period of 5-6 years. And the cost was millions of death, like every week, 40,000, 80,000, every week, so many thousands and thousands of people dying in the trenches, in horrible conditions, bad weather, disease and mud and cold. And so when you're in this suffering conditions, everybody starts praying. And also I read this, the report of Lenin. You know Lenin? He started the communist revolution in Russia. So he was a convinced atheist, communists are atheists. And when he was dying, he started praying to a chair. So the description is that he fell down, he was grabbing the leg of the chair and it was like, help me, please, help me, I don't want to die, So we all have to take shelter. So if we are suffering, that can be a good motivation, You are suffering, you need some help, and then, it's natural to turn towards God or to take shelter, Then another one is if you are in financial difficulties, So in the West that might apply not so much, but in India you can see, many people, it's probably good, You go to Mayapur, you become a brahmachari, you get a nice small room, you get a cell phone, Good, What more do you need, So that can also be a motivation, to improve your financial situation, to have some security, financial security. Then the third one is curiosity, You might just be curious, Let's see what the Hare Krishnas are doing, Let me visit the temple. Let's see what's happening. You just want to see what's going on there. And the fourth one, which is the ideal one, is when you're actually searching for answers. You're actually looking for answers. You're searching for knowledge. And Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita that the first four need to be purified. Sorry, the first three. So the one who is suffering needs to purify his motivation. Similarly, the one who is expecting, financial, rewards, or somebody who's just curious, So this original motivation, if it's not purified, it needs to be fulfilled. So that's the example we're seeing here with Dhruva Maharaj, who was suffering and who wanted a very great kingdom, so a lot of wealth. So that was his original motivation. And if the motivation is not purified, it will be fulfilled. So this is very important. And Srila Prabhupada describes in this connection that very often, if we are not, at least as advanced or pure as Dhruva Maharaj, then very often what would happen is that as soon as the reward is there, you stop with devotional service. So that can also happen. So let's say you're curious, so you come to the temple, okay, you spend a week, okay, I know what they're doing every day, I know what kind of food they eat, I know what kind of melodies they sing, seen it, done it, okay, next, So, and then that's it, Or somebody who's suffering, might be in great suffering, then they elevate themselves to a better position. Many of the devotees who joined in the very beginning, they were drug addicts actually, because in the 60s there was a big drug problem. All the young people were abusing drugs and experimenting with drugs, and many of the first devotees, and still nowadays there might be devotees who have a background of drug abuse, and suffering horribly. They want to improve their situation, so they join the temple, And then after some time they become sattvic, they become, healthy again. And you can, many times we have observed this, devotees who joined, when they first come, they look very wretched, tired, dirty, And then after a few weeks, after a few months, suddenly they look clean, they glow up, they, come back to life, literally, So then the question, what do you do next? So the tendency is, okay, I'm good now. I can go back to enjoy. I have again vigor and energy to enjoy life. Very often that also might happen, so therefore that motivation, whatever motivations we have, along with Krishna consciousness, we should be beware of them. Of course, ideally, we manage to purify them, to let go of these motivations. But of course, it's easier said than done, because we all have motivations, some reason, something that's motivating us, It might be power, might be recognition, might be shelter, it might be community, it might be whatever it might be. Maybe it's money, maybe it's whatever it might be that we have any motivations. We should beware of them, because if we cultivate this, at one point we will have to deal with it. We have to deal with these desires. But very importantly also is that in the example of Dhruva Maharaj, even he has the feeling that he fell down from his position, he did not give up Krishna consciousness completely. But of course, when we continue reading the story, we will see how this position as a king and as a ruler and as a kshatriya brought him in quite a few, difficult situations, where again the topic of revenge became a big thing again. So he wanted to revenge the killing of his brother, and he went on a campaign, to hunt the yakshas, and he was really into it, so much so that Brahma himself had to stop him because he was creating, disproportional havoc, you could say. So like that, we have to be conscious that whatever we are cultivating along, pure devotional service, might be a distraction that at one point might really lead us astray, or stop our devotional service for some time. That can also happen. So yes, I think I'll stop here now. But maybe there are some questions, some comments. Nothing. Then, yes.
Thanks so much for the class.
There's the mic. Prabhu, what's your name, Prabhu? Yes. Madhurananda Prabhu. There's the mic, so those who are hearing live can also hear.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, first of all. Really appreciate it. I'm just thinking, how do we understand that somebody like Dhruva Maharaj can take to the path of devotional service and still harbour material desires? It's like, what hope is there for us if someone at his level, still even seeing the Lord face to face, still holds material desires?
Yes, I guess it's a realistic story. But yeah, the thing is that as far as I understand, is that Dhruva Maharaj was a child, and he was genuinely motivated and very sincere in his endeavor, But his endeavor was mixed, So there is this description that there's Jnana Mishra Bhakti and Karma Mishra Bhakti, So and Srila Prabhupada says that, strictly speaking, we're not Bhakti yogis, Because Bhakti yogi means somebody who is free of material desires. Bhakti means it's free of karma and free of jnana. Only then it's truly bhakti, And then we could say we are devotees, we are bhakti yogis. And then Srila Prabhupada continues to say, but, it is to be expected that we are mixed devotees. We have karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti. But because our aim, our goal is pure devotional service, therefore we can call ourselves bhakti yogis, Prabhupada says. So we can call ourselves bhakti yogis. And I think that's the point, that at least that's how I have been motivated, or what I understood, is that one should be honest about one's position, about one's desires, material situation, and conditioning, but one should never compromise the ideal. So that's because that's sometimes the tendency that we might have, is because we cannot live up to the highest standard, then we try to make an excuse. It's like, no, actually, nowadays in Kali Yuga, it's very difficult, I mean, if you think of Ajamil, Ajamil, he was also born in such a good family. He had the best conditions, and it was, an age where there was no internet, there was no distractions, there was no, advertisement, no cell phones, and only one instance, by chance in the forest, he saw, a couple in a passionate embrace, and that was it, So what chance do we have, So in Kali Yuga, in our modern age, there's a different standard, something like that. So we might come up with such an idea. That's not the point. So the point is we never compromise the ideal. Or another way our Bhakti leader always used to emphasize is that sensual fall down is nowhere close to a philosophical fall down. So if you have a sensual slip, for some reason, you on Ekadashi, you're too hungry, you just eat pasta, It's like, oh my God, but and you are like repenting and you're sorry, But if you say, actually, once a year, Bhima Ekadashi is enough, So actually, only one Ekadashi a year should be enough, and the rest of the year we can just eat pasta on Ekadashi. So that this philosophical fall down, that's a real problem. If we are repentful, it's actually described that being repentful is the first stage of ecstatic love. If you really feel repentful and cry actually in repentance for your mistakes and for your, like Dhruva Maharaj now is very repentful, he's not happy actually. So he's repenting his situation. This emotion of, you could say, what do I call it? It's kind of redemption, the word redemption means that you realize you make a mistake, so you are striving for redemption. And so in redemption, you feel purified. So it's described like that. So we should honestly, repent, and in redemption, that's the beginning of, ecstatic love. So that's what I could say. Hare Krishna. Noch was? Something else? Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.